everybody, Gina DeLuca here. Okay, today I'm going to be doing a straight pour with one of my favorite color combinations. What we're doing today is for my background slash base coat, I have a mix of Liquitex Basics and Dioxazine Purple mixed with Titanium White. If you do this straight, it will dry very, very dark, almost black. Sometimes I use this in place of black in brushwork. But I wanted it to be a bit lighter so that it appeared more purple. Instead of like super, super deep, I wanted it to have a little vibrancy. So I added some of that titanium white to it. For our cell makers, we have the DecoArt Americana Decor Metallics in copper and in soft gold. I do love this combination together. It's just kind of magical the way that they glow next to each other. The consistency that we're working with, so these are mixed 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. That mixture then has a mixture of 90% water and 10% Floetrol added to it until I get the consistency that I'm looking for, which is, hopefully you can see that. I am blinded by this studio light. I have to figure this lighting situation out. But it's about a 2 or a 2.5 on my consistency scale. Let's see if we can maybe see it better here. I know that shadow is kind of in the way, but that's what we're working with. It makes a mound, but it does disappear relatively quickly. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards. Each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all the information that you need. The exact paint color, brand, recipe, consistency, all of that stuff. This is the picture of that particular painting. This box here contains a tip for that particular technique. Down here at the bottom, we have the color palette used in that painting, and then these two colors in those boxes can be used together as the basis of a 2-color palette, or you can build off of those two. And there are 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. Use all of the colors or just some of the colors. Mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. And if you buy them off of Amazon, please do leave some feedback. They are sticklers for algorithms over there, and feedback is a huge part of it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is pour 2 ounces into this cup. I'm going to reserve some to put on top after I add these colors, but I actually want more of the purple to show through than usual. Usually, I would have 3 of these cups, 3 cell makers, and 2 ounces of my background color. And the paint that goes into the cup first for a straight pour, that's what I call the background color. That is going to be the color that appears in between your cells. The cells will pop up to the front, and that's why I call it the background color. What I'm putting down now is the base coat. Your base coat could technically be any color, but I make it the same color as my background color for a couple of reasons. One of them being, if I decided that I wanted some negative space, if something very cool was happening on the edge and I didn't want to tilt it off, then I would be able to do that easily. Another is if I were using white as my base coat. And there were bubbles in the base coat. There will be bubbles in the base coat. We're going to take care of that, but you usually don't get all of them. So what happens is those bubbles in your white base coat will come up through your pour, and then you have these tiny little white cells. And there's no other white in your painting, and it just kind of takes away from the whole vibe that you got going on. And so that is why I use the same color for my base coat as I do for the background color. The reason that we use a base coat is so that your paints have something to slide around on. When you pour your paint onto the canvas, something has to stick to it. And if you don't have a base coat, that's going to be the paint that you pour is going to stick to it, and then it's going to roll over top of itself as you tilt. If you lay down a base coat first, what will happen is your poured paints will stretch. And that's how you wind up getting the nice big cells, because your paints are stretching, not rolling over top of each other. And the reason that I paint my edges first when I do a straight pour is because these paints are mixed kind of thin. And it can be thin on the sides, and then your canvas kind of shows through a bit. And that's not what you want. So just cover your edges first before you pour or put your base coat on. Okay, so now we're going to pop the bubbles in our base coat. There's always going to be bubbles. So you want to get those while you can so they don't pop up through your cells. And as this sits, more bubbles will come to the top, kind of like a cake. And then we will torch it again before we pour. Okay, let's put some paint in a cup. I'm going to start with the copper. Always double check your consistencies before you put it in the cup. The sauce may thicken upon standing. Pouring from up high because I want it to sink. So the reaction that I am getting when I get these cells without using silicone, there are a couple of ways that can happen. One is the Rayleigh-Taylor instability. That is based on densities. So a paint that is more dense will sink and the lighter will rise to the top. That's not what's happening here. This is a hydrophobic effect that is caused by the reaction between a glossy paint and a matte paint. The DecoArt paints dry more matte in finish than the Liquitex paints. Well, not all Liquitex paints. The cadmium yellow light hue creates cells because it's more matte. And that was discovered by accident in video number 15. You can see the first straight pour if you like. Okay, and so now I'm going to put some more of this purple on top. And this, what this will do is give those paints that have already risen back to the top a chance to make cells. If I didn't do this, what happens is I get a lot of cell action on the edges and a lot of that will get tilted off. So I find this is a great way to preserve as many of the cells as I can get. You can see it's still trying to pop up there. Don't think I'm going to have a problem getting cells on this one. Okay, and that is 8 ounces in my cup. That's kind of my magic number for a 16 by 20. 8 ounces in your cup, plus enough to cover your canvas with the base coat. I find that this is the best amount where I have enough to tilt, but not so much that I have to tilt half of it off, because you never want to have to do that. Let's make a mess, shall we? And I'm going to start from up high. I'm allowing these paints to churn and blend in that puddle. As I get towards the end of the cup, I will get closer to the canvas. Maybe put a couple of rings in there. I think this one's going to have a Fibonacci. Well, a Fibonacci with a ring. Okay, I do want to swirl that center just a hair. Just going to take a little. There we go. Okay, let's pop these bubbles. More bubbles. So many bubbles. And I'm going to keep popping them in the base coat too, because they will keep popping up. 'Tis the nature of a bubble. Okay. So I'm going to let this sit for a minute. I could tilt this right now and wind up with something beautiful. I'd probably get a lot of pop-up cells right there when that's stretched out. But I'm going to let this sit. And as I do let that sit, I will wind up with some more cells popping up. And if I wait for them to pop up first and then tilt, I can stretch them and get those beautiful, juicy Boulder cells. If I tilted it right now, then this whole section, I would probably get the pop-up cells or the pearl cells, which are like very, pretty uniform in size. I like the Boulder cells. I like the depth that they create. So I just try to be as patient as possible. I like to let it sit for 5 to 7 minutes-ish. I know it's hard. If you are the impatient type, I would take that time to just walk away and do a quick chore. Wash a couple of dishes, feed a cat, clean up some cat puke. That was my morning today. Many piles, and one of them, well, several of them were covered in ants, and it was fresh. I don't know how the ants found it so quickly. So apparently I have an ant problem here that I just learned about. So that's fun. Bigsby is diabetic, so he has a very sensitive stomach, and if he goes too long without eating, then he gets sick, and then sometimes he eats too fast and he gets sick. So I always have Resolve and paper towels on hand. The joys of being a fur parent to a diabetic cat. Again, more bubbles. They will just keep popping up. You'll see them as it sits. I love the center here. I hope I can keep that the way it is. I hope I don't stretch it to oblivion. That can happen sometimes on a rectangular canvas. If this were a square canvas, I'd have a much better chance of keeping that perfectly Nautilus-like. Again, more torching. A lot of people fast forward through this part, but I kind of feel like it's important that y'all see just how long it takes to let it sit, how slowly I tilt. I feel like if everything is sped up, then you kind of really don't know how long to let it sit, or, you know, how quickly, or I should say slowly, you should be tilting. Okay. I'm going to test these waters here and see which direction. And also with straight pours, the more you move it around, the more cells wind up popping up because you're stretching the top layer, and it finally stretches enough for the cells to pop through. Okay. Gonna go for it. Okay, and now I'm gonna hit this opposing corner. And if you're mindful of where the weight of your paint is, you can see, you can almost get those 90-degree angles. Okay, bringing the weight of paint back to center before I change directions. Okay, and again, bringing the weight of the paint back to the center. I am not keeping my perfectly Nautilus center. It's gone. I didn't think it would work out on a rectangular canvas. Okay, what's going on here? Moving too quickly. If you notice that there's like wiggles in your lines, you might be moving too quickly. You want it to stretch evenly. And it does take patience. But if you've ever had a canvas that was not level, you do know how much it can change over time. So even if it feels like you're not going to have enough paint to cover the canvas, you do. You probably do, if you're patient enough. Come on, baby. You're almost there. Okay, and now I will adjust this composition. I'm going to bring the weight of the paint back to the center. Slowly. And as this moves around, more cells will pop up. 'Tis the nature of the beast. I should get a whole bunch of the copper colored pop-up cells here at the bottom. I want to open these lines up here a bit. And I'm just adjusting the composition, getting my focal point where I want it. Okay, I think that's it. All right, I am going to let this sit and do what it does. I am going to scrape the edges. I mean, I'd always show this, but I always do this. You want to scrape the edges of your canvas, the bottoms here, because it will continue to pull paint as it's dripping. And I don't want the composition to change without my permission. So that's how we do it. And actually, I'll show you this too. There was a little corner here that was kind of just like meh. Little bikini corner that I missed. You can just take some of your drippings and come in and zhuzh that up. Easy peasy. All right, I'm gonna let this sit. I'll bring you in for a close-up back in a few. Okay, here it is. It's been sitting for a bit. And I'm gonna try to not kill you with this glare from this light. I still haven't figured out these lighting angles yet. But lots of beautiful 3D looking cells. You have the pop-up cells down here at the bottom. But I love what happens in the center. It looks like it is glowing. Straight pours with these DecoArt metallic paints are just my favorite. That's why you see me do so many of them. They just produce beautiful results. I can't be mad at it. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you did find this video helpful. Check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined. Definitely not expected, but always greatly appreciate it. Helps me stay stocked up in supplies. And also in the description box, you will find links to my affiliates, DecoArt being one of them. You can always find these paints on their website, and they usually have more colors in stock than you will find at your local stores. Use that link or the Amazon Blick or Arteza link, and I will receive a small commission at no additional cost to you. Another way to help a sister out, it won't cost you a penny. All you have to do is enter through those links, and I will be given credit for your purchase. Also in the description box, you will find the link to my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and the fluid art inspiration cards for sale. And last but most certainly not least, you will find the link to our Facebook group, Go Make Some Art. Join us there, post your masterpieces, get some inspiration, ask your questions. Did I say that? Yeah. So that is it for today. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.